Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We're in the Fantasy Trip, the In the Labyrinth book by Steve Jackson Games. This video is going to be on advanced encounter design, where I covered the basics of encounter design for the Fantasy Trip. This will give you more advanced ideas and new ways to handle it. And it'll combine some of the other encounter concepts to help you craft encounters. I'd get comfortable with the other concepts before using these. So if you're running games in this setting and you're not used to there not being challenge ratings and you don't know how powerful things are, continue to run them for maybe one or two labyrinths, one or two dungeons, where you're just using those basic concepts to make your encounters. But after that, here's a couple of ideas that could help you design your encounters. This will also help you in any other game after you get used to the basic encounters. So there's the rule of minion characters where they have 1 hit point. There's other rules for minion characters where they can have 2 or 3 hit points. But the basic minion characters come from 4th edition D&D. That's where they were introduced. And they could be a very good addition to your very powerful creatures that you're using in combat. Say I got a wizard, I got a spellcaster, or a big creature like an ogre that I don't want the party to be able to just surround and kill within a turn or two. I can then flood the playing field with minions. In the case of the ogre, I'd probably only have maybe enough minions equal to the party number, because all they have to do is 1 point of damage to drop them. And I might have in reserve some more minions to join the fight after the party starts wiping them out. But what it will do, it'll decrease the amount of attacks that can go after the ogre. I would make sure that at least 2 to 3 players could probably fight the ogre and the rest of the minions fight the party. Depends on the size of the party. I've been playing with bigger party groups recently, so I would definitely take that approach. Same thing with your spellcaster. You would probably want your spellcaster to have somebody to defend them. So say a spellcaster and a knight in armor beside it, and then some minions on the battlefield. You could also throw in terrain effects that the party would have to deal with. And it doesn't have to be for those encounters. So say they have to cross this narrow bridge. Well, say the fall's not too far, maybe 20 feet, but the ground is covered in stalagmites. So there's all these spikes protruding up from the ground. So if a party member falls, he could take fall damage, could possibly get impaled, and then have to find his way back out of the pit and across the bridge again. Well, if you're fighting something in the air while you're on the bridge, it has a lot of mobility and you don't. If somebody's coming across the bridge and you're coming across the bridge, well, now you have narrow melee fighting. And if you roll a couple of fumbles, you could end up slicing the bridge if it's a rope bridge and falling into the pit. Another thing is you could have a actual pit, not a bridge that crosses it, in the center of the room, along the edge of a room, and give that as an option for the party to push, or the enemy to push the party members into the pit to do damage. You could also have trapped areas in the floor. Say the floor is checker colored pattern. And if the players step on the wrong color, it triggers say a dart trap that does 1 point of damage. Now it could be bad if that dart trap also delivers poison, but even if it doesn't, 1 point of damage if they're hit every time they step on one of those wrong colors could be bad. And once they realize what colors they are, they're going to try to avoid it, but then you could have the enemies push them into the colors, and so on and so forth. So that's other options. The best option for a dragon is to never let it land. If it only stays in the air and attacks from the air, the party can only fight it with ranged weapons. Meaning that that's to the advantage of the dragon, because he can swoop in low, attack with the breath weapon, and swoop out of there. They might get a couple of attacks while he's attacking with the breath weapon, and they might attempt to attack him while he's further up in the air. You could always use oil against the party, or if you're a player, you could always use oil against the monsters. Yes, you could set oil on fire, but that's not what I was going for when I suggested this. If you throw that much oil on the ground, there's no way you can stand in that area after you've stepped in it. So as soon as oil's covering an area, if you attempt to move through it, you got to make a hard dex roll or a hard balance roll to not slip and fall down. The secondary effect is now you can be lit on fire easier. But if you just throw oil into an area, you've pretty much controlled what the enemy can do, even if they're not aware of it. So here's an example. Say I know there's enemies on the other side of the door, and I want to provoke them to come to me so I don't have to fight all of them at once, which is another tactic that is very usable. I could take a flask or two of oil, pour it down in front of the door on my side of the door, open the door, provoke the enemies, and as they come through, they have to step in this oil that is not on fire. So if they're not paying attention, they just won't be aware of it. And they step in this oil, start sliding and falling down, and then we could have a couple of guys like 5 foot, 10 foot back, just bashing them as they come in and fighting them while they're on the ground. Another thing you can do is you can have walls set up on the battlefield. They're made out of wood, not very big. Maybe they're like 7 foot wide walls. They're 5 foot high, 6 foot high, and they have arrow slits in them. And then the enemy has archers behind those walls firing. Yes, they're wooden, so you can set them on fire, but you'd still have to deal with the fact you can't really return fire to these archers and hit them easily because you'd have to fire through that arrow slit, or you have to get around that wall to attack. So if there's a couple of those, while the party's dealing with maybe a handful of minions, even the archers could be minions because they'd still have the same dex that a regular character would have or monster would have. They could be taking these hits at distance until they can get there and resolve it. Those are some of the advanced concepts I got in my mind for this video. There might be a few I'm missing, but those are the ones that always stand out to me. In D&D, a tanglefoot bag is always useful. Never forget that. I remember causing a flying creature to be grounded by throwing a tanglefoot bag into its wings. So tanglefoot bags are also useful. Flasks of acid can be very useful too, especially when fighting trolls. So just keep in mind that you could have lots of options, and you could set up little barriers, little areas that give the players more options. Another thing could be a column that is cracked. The players could break it and drop a ceiling down. You got to determine the area of the ceiling that's going to fall and who all could be affected by it. And if you have characters in the party that would understand construction or stone and stuff, you could give them a warning of, hey, this could cover a big area, this could cover the whole room, this could cover half the room. And that way they're aware of the danger of breaking it. But they could also go, breaking that will wipe out this horde of 50 or so goblins. So play towards creating a very interesting environment when you're designing your encounters too. Well, hope this video helped you guys. Until we all game again.